Hello there, welcome. Today we're going to be talking about photosynthesis. Photosynthesis. So, most of the times we hear this term in primary school, but then it also applied, but then with more depth in secondary school. So, let's break down the term. So, it's photo and it's synthesis. So here we just separated this into two parts here. Therefore, photo just means light. Synthesis means is producing something, actually. To synthesize something is to produce something. So this is the use of light to produce something. But then what is that something? Stay tuned for the video. Okay, so here we're using a CAPS study guide. So it says here, all living organisms require energy to survive. This energy can either be obtained directly from the sun, in this case it's by plants, or from the food that is eaten. This is animals. So in this chapter we'll look at how plants convert radiant energy into chemical potential using the raw materials available for them. The term photosynthesis means light is used. Photo means the use of light, and synthesis means to manufacture, as we had mentioned before. So this is just the key terminology which you might want to just know, because we'll explore those terms during this lesson. So let us define what is photosynthesis. What can you say photosynthesis is? Photosynthesis is just a chemical process. A chemical process by which carbohydrates in form of glucose is produced using radiant energy. Radiant energy. So let us look through the definition itself. What does it actually say? It says that it's a chemical process. So this happens with the involving of chemical reactions. So whenever you have a chemical process, it means it involves chemical reactions by which carbohydrates in form of glucose, now we know that glucose falls under carbohydrates, is produced using radiant energy. So what is radiant energy? Radiant energy is simply the energy we obtain from the sun. So we therefore define photosynthesis as chemical process by which carbohydrates, glucose, is produced using radiant energy. So with the use of this study guide, we're going to look at how this happened. So this is the light energy. So this light energy is this radiant energy we have discussed about. So the radiant energy or the light energy is this light energy from the sun. And then this is carbon dioxide that is absorbed. So the carbon dioxide that the factories release, the carbon dioxide that people release, and all forms or sources of carbon dioxide are absorbed by a plant leaf. So this is the overview of the photosynthesis. So photosynthesis occurs in green plants and takes place in the chloroplast of a cell. This can be seen in figure 1 below. So in the roots, water is absorbed as mentioned, and then sugar is formed, oxygen is released, and then we actually have an overview of photosynthesis. We actually know that photosynthesis involves this, this, and this. So this is sugar that is formed, water that is absorbed, oxygen released, and then carbon dioxide that is absorbed. So let us look at how this happens. So what would you need for photosynthesis to take place? So for photosynthesis to take place, you would need carbon dioxide. This carbon dioxide is an essential gas that is very, very needed when you are synthesizing carbohydrates using light energy. So carbon dioxide is an essential gas which is involved in photosynthesis. So you need carbon dioxide plus water, which is chemically written as hydrogen oxide, but then I'll write a word equation afterwards, plus radiant energy. In these terms, radiant energy is not represented by any chemical because it is not a chemical. So in order for us to have photosynthesis completed, we need carbon dioxide plus hydrogen oxide or water. So alongside radiant energy also, it's very essential. So these three are essential for photosynthesis to take place. So we have products which is glucose and oxygen. So photosynthesis, by synthesizing using radiant energy, we aim to produce glucose and oxygen. Therefore, we will conclude that we have done photosynthesis. Otherwise, when we don't have glucose as a product and when we don't have oxygen as a product, there is no photosynthesis. So what aids photosynthesis? Here we just represented the requirements and the products, but then how do the requirements end up being the products? Simple, by the use of chlorophyll and the use of certain enzymes. So this is more like the process or the method that is used to synthesize these products. To synthesize is simply to produce something. That's why they say photosynthesis, to produce something, to produce something using light energy. Photo meaning light. So here, the chlorophyll and the enzymes are part of the process in forming the products of photosynthesis. So the requirements of photosynthesis, we now know that is these: required to form this, formed. So through photosynthesis, we have formed glucose. This is the chemical formula for glucose, and oxygen gas from carbon dioxide, hydrogen oxide, and radiant energy. But then let's go further into explaining the process. So as per se, the carbon dioxide in this context, carbon dioxide diffuses into the leaves of the plant. So carbon dioxide will go through into the leaf of the plant through the stomata. So water is an inorganic substance absorbed from soil by the roots of a plant. Why do we water our plants? It's because we want those plants to be able to grow. So water will be an essential part for photosynthesis. Then radiant energy or light energy is absorbed from the sun by the leaves of the plants. So photosynthesis has got one site. A site is just a place where things happen. So it has got one site, which is called the leaf. So the leaf is where photosynthesis actually takes place. So whatever we will talk about photosynthesis must relate in some way to the leaf. So we've got chlorophyll, which is a green pigment found inside the chloroplast, and then enzymes which are found inside the chloroplast. So these are all the requirements for the products of photosynthesis. And then after a certain method here, there we get these products, which is glucose, which is the carbohydrate formed. It is converted and stored as starch in plants or glycogen in animals. So oxygen is a gas that is released back into the atmosphere from the leaves. So we have two products and 5 requirements for photosynthesis. So let's look at the method. So now we're going to look at the basic structure of a chloroplast. Remember, the leaf is the site for photosynthesis. The leaf is where photosynthesis takes place. So what in the leaves makes photosynthesis to be possible is the chloroplast. So this is the basic structure of the chloroplast. I may not be good at that drawing, but then I'll refer to an actual diagram. So this chloroplast is an organelle that is found in the leaf. Remember, the leaf is the site for photosynthesis, but then certain things in the leaf make photosynthesis possible. So what are those things that make photosynthesis possible in the leaves? We have got here the grana. So here we've got this pile of things, we call it grana. Why did we say that it's grana? It's because it's a plural of granum. So granum is a singular way of saying this item, this portion, this deck is what is a granum if it's singular. So we'll explore on what does the grana do in photosynthesis. But then let us still continue. We'll have here a starch granule. We'll call this what? A starch grain rather. So a starch grain is where the starch is stored, because we said we are producing glucose according to our definition for photosynthesis. So starch is a form of glucose. So we have also a chloroplast DNA. DNA is represented in many shapes. So this is the chloroplast DNA. Right. And then we've got the stroma. The stroma is this part, this space. Whatever occupies this space, we call it a stroma, whatever that occupies this place, this remaining place. Then we've got many grana. It's not only one. We've got many grana here, many grana. And then we've got this membrane. Just remember, when you get the word membrane, it means that we are talking about something. There's something that is an outer layer of something. So we've got this thing called a lamella. A lamella. So what does a lamella do? A lamella will be the outer protective shield of this whole thingy. So this is called a lamella. So a lamella is a membrane. Remember, what is the function of membranes? Is to cover, or are the outer parts of an organ or an organelle rather. So this is basically here we find the double membrane. We meet the word membrane again. the double membrane. So it means it's got an inner part and an outer part. That's why it is double. So it is two layers of membranes that are protecting the chloroplast. So anyway, don't forget that a membrane is that the outer layer, or this protective shield of a cell. So lamella is one of the membranes for this thing called a thylakoid. So the thylakoid is this structure that contains the chlorophyll. This structure is a thylakoid. So when there are many thylakoids, we call it grana. So basically, thylakoid is that this is this structure that contains what? Chlorophyll inside. So inside we find chlorophyll. Inside the what? The thylakoid we find chlorophyll. So this is the basic structure of a chloroplast. So a chloroplast, remember, is this part in the leaf whereby the photosynthesis that aids photosynthesis, or whereby photosynthesis takes place actually. So this enables the leaf to photosynthesize. So without the chloroplast, there is no photosynthesis. So it's an essential part of photosynthesis. Not to forget, we can mention the ribosomes. We find these structures called ribosomes. We'll talk all about it with their functions alongside. So let's look at a more professional drawing, more than this one. This one was just showing you the skeleton of the chloroplast. So we're now going to show you the actual chloroplast and how it looks. So this is the chloroplast. So I'm sure I've mentioned everything there. So this is the stroma, this is the ribosomes, there's the thylakoid, the granum, the double membrane, the lamella, and the chloroplast DNA. So this is very comparable to my drawing because my drawing kind of has that skeleton on exactly how is the structure of a how is the structure of a chloroplast. So this is the organelle whereby photosynthesis takes place. So this is found in plant cells. Photosynthesis happens in plant. So let's look at the part of the chloroplast and the function. So we see the thylakoid, as we had identified what the thylakoid is. It's a disc-shaped, this is the shape of the thylakoid, it's disc-shaped membranes that contain chlorophyll. So chlorophyll is just basically the reason is basically the main requirement for photosynthesis. But then we'll explain that later. So the granum is a stake of thylakoids. So when thylakoids are kind of a stake, or they are kind of many, and then on top of each other, kind of like that, as suggested by the image we just saw before, we call it granum. So a lamella is the membranes that make up the thylakoids. It's the lamella. So the lamella is the membrane, so they are the outer covering of the thylakoids. And then the stroma is a liquid part of the chloroplast. Remember when I say that the space that is contained, that space which I marked, let me just go back to it. This space which I marked and said is the stroma is in liquid state. So it's the liquid part of the chloroplast. And the starch granule is the glucose produced, is where the glucose produced is stored as starch in the structure. So this structure of starch granule is a site for storage of glucose as starch. So the chloroplast DNA is just contains genetic information, and the double membranes protect the chloroplast and allow substances in and out. So as we had said that carbon dioxide is required for photosynthesis, so the double membrane will allow for the entry of carbon dioxide into the plant chloroplast. Thank you for watching. I'm sure you have had a quite overview of photosynthesis. So this is the basic stuff today. Please don't forget to subscribe, and next week we'll be releasing another video which further explains the phases of photosynthesis. Thank you so much for watching.
Z1, let's go, boy!